Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another episode of Movie Roundup. Now like every movie roundup, there's not really a theme that I'm trying to do. It's just movies I've seen recently that I want to talk about. Now let's start. The first film I'm talking about today is Aftersun, directed by Charlotte Wells. Now, I'm not familiar with Wells' work, but this was a pretty great start to say the least. The film is about a vacation that a girl takes with her father, and through it we learn about their relationship, as well as bigger things within the story. Now, I know that sounds vague, but it makes more sense once you've seen the film. The film follows the girl character played by Frankie Corio, but does follow the dad character at times. It's an interesting watch that doesn't fully reveal itself until later, or even after a second viewing. For me personally, the film is about reflections of the past, and the reality against how we perceive the past, if that makes sense. It's a beautiful film that's deeply personal. The film does a great job connecting the audience to the characters. It made me want to know more about their relationship. The film really does that with the writing and acting. That being said, the performances are what make the film for me personally. Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio both do a great job in this film. The characters are interpretable, and the more thought you put into the film and with the characters' relationship, the more you can get out of the film, which is pretty great. There are some elements that I wish I got more out of, and I didn't fully enjoy every scene, but the ending is fantastic and a little sad, with beautiful music. There's many scenes as well as the ending that is more metaphorical rather than literal. As I just stated, the music is beautifully sad and it brings the ending together. It's a film that people can get a lot out of, and I'm giving this a strong 7 out of 10, really close to an 8. The next film is Harakiri, directed by Masaki Kobayashi. This is a film about a samurai that performs Harakiri, which is a practice of self-disembowelment that is done in front of a court. The film is about desperation, poverty, and mostly revenge. This story is very dialogue heavy, but the film knows when to get silent and let the visuals start talking. The film takes place in almost one location as a man tells his story of how he got to the performing Harakiri. And the more he tells his story, the more the true plot reveals itself. This was a pretty satisfying film to say the least. The more you learn about this specific character and their life, the more engaged I became. The cinematography was fantastic, showing a mixture of close and wide shots. One specific scene in a field with a mixture of slow-paced editing and the framing of the scene was just so perfect. Mwah! The action scenes are extremely well done. The framing of the duels and the suspense that builds is so great to watch. What also makes the action so great is the story. There's meaning behind the fighting and characters, and I love that. A classic samurai film is always a great experience for film lovers, and this truly is a classic samurai film. This is a must-see if you're into these types of movies, and I'm giving this a strong 8 out of 10, really close to a 9. And the next film I watched was Beau is Afraid. This is a 3-hour long film directed by Ari Aster. This director is well known for films like Hereditary and Midsommar. I loved Hereditary the first time I watched the film. It's a fantastically acted and directed horror film that has deeply unsettling imagery. There's themes about manipulation and grief. It's a really good movie that I recommend. And when Midsommar was coming out, I got a little excited to see what this director does. And I really didn't find myself enjoying Midsommar the first time through it. It wasn't until this year, 2023, for me to fully appreciate Midsommar. Now, I don't think the film is a masterpiece like some people do, but it is a damn good film just to say the least. That being said, my expectations for his newest film was a little mixed, and starting off, for a 3-hour long film, I was never really bored. I will say that this is an ambitious film that is really well shot and directed. Beau is Afraid is about a man who suffers from extreme agoraphobia as he goes on an adventure to find his mother's house. The film deals with grief, like all of Ari Aster's films. One of the things I liked about this film is its environment. The whole film takes place in this exaggerated version of what I feel like is America. The world is very over the top. I really think it's supposed to represent the main character's anxiety and just how he views the world. The music is also very ominous and builds along with this fear of the everyday world. Everything about the technicals came together to create a world of anxiety. The main character is interesting to follow. Beau, the main character, has anxiety and a lot of paranoia, and it was very interesting to see that unfold within the story and events. Joaquin Phoenix does a really good job being subtly sad yet over the top at other points in the film. The elements I'm discussing are pretty great, but there are problems I had within the story. There's some elements in the story that try to be purposefully confusing and not really make sense, and it was kinda messy and unsatisfying for me personally. There are things I won't spoil, but there's certain things that I feel like it was just thrown into the movie instead of actually meaning something. I guess some events and imagery are supposed to be interpretable, but others I feel like try to be interpretable but end up being kinda like nothing. The plot just follows the main character as he goes from place to place. As he goes to new places, he meets new people and affects his journey. The movie goes into detail over the main character, Beau, and why he is the way he is, especially the relationship with his mother. However, the longer the film went on, the less I enjoyed my time. Also, some parts felt like bullshit to me near the middle and end of the film. Something would happen and he would be blamed for it, as well as events near the end being kinda dumb to me personally. And near the end of the film, Joaquin Phoenix's performance had this whimpering attitude and manner that did get a little annoying to me. Now overall, I liked what the film was trying to say for the most part, and it was an ambitious film, but it doesn't come together to be as fully satisfying as it could be. Overall, I did enjoy this film and I might watch it again. There might be an extended version like Midsommar, so there might be that. And I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. The next film I watched was Midsommar, or Midsommar, whichever one. Also directed by Ari Aster. When this came out back in 2019, I wasn't really a fan to say the least. And to discuss why, I need to kind of talk a little bit about spoilers. So spoiler warning for Midsommar. The film is about a person that experiences a traumatic event and then goes on a vacation into a village in Sweden. And through, the film discusses toxic relationships and how people can feel trapped within them. It has gorgeous wide shots with a bunch of movement happening in the background. The problem I initially had was with the story, as well as the characters' motivations. In the story, 2 elderly people jump off a cliff and die, and the group that went to the village decides to stay after that happens. While some of them actually decided to leave, I found that to be annoying that everyone decided to stay. But after watching the extended version of the film, there was a scene that actually addressed it. The main character is talking to her boyfriend and wants to leave, but her boyfriend manipulates and essentially forces her into staying. So now there's a feeling of actually being trapped in the film. That also connects with the toxic relationship. I really thought that scene actually helped the film, and should have been kept in the theatrical version. The slow-moving camera work was just great to watch. I really felt for the main character. Florence Pugh does a fantastic job showing a character that's extremely emotional and panicked. I still have problems with how the film unfolds. I believe that the best parts are still the beginning and end, with the middle just kinda having some issues for me personally. But that ending is pretty stellar. As I said earlier, this isn't a masterpiece that some people think it is, but it is a good film, and I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. The next film I watched was Tar, directed by Todd Field. This was an interesting watch for me. I didn't find myself truly loving the film, but I wholly appreciate what the film does and what it's trying to say. The film is a slow burn about an esteemed musician conductor, as her life begins to fall apart essentially. The film does a great job making Lydia Tar seem like an actual person. The way they achieve this is not only through the many articles and awards that they show off through the film, but the writing as well. The writing and character of Tar is the best aspect of the film for me. The writing feels very natural, being very dialogue driven, with many interesting conversations. Cate Blanchett does a fantastic job playing a rough but passionate character. There's many subtle details with the character that makes her appear like a real person. The pacing of the film, while slow, was well done. The film does a great job slowly and naturally follow the main character of Tar as her life falls apart. The camera work and framing was all very professional and well done. The film doesn't do anything too crazy with the cinematography, however, but it still looks fantastic. It's a great film that I appreciate more than I love, and I'm giving this a solid 8 out of 10. The next film I watched was EO, directed by Jerzy Skolimowski. I didn't really like this one. The film follows a donkey named EO as he goes on a little adventure of abuse and mistreatment, for the most part. The film has very little dialogue and uses more visuals to tell the story. The film is pretty good on a technical level and has some nice shots, but there's only so much that I can connect with involving a donkey. I didn't get much out of the events the donkey went through, and I found myself getting bored through the film. It just wasn't interesting to me personally. If you enjoyed this donkey movie, then you might enjoy U Hazard Balthazar, which is an older film following the same ideas and themes. Anyways, that's really all I have for this film. I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. The next film I watched was a rewatch of a South Korean classic called Oldboy. This was directed by Park Chan-wook, a fantastic director known for the Vengeance trilogy, The Handmaiden, as well as Thirst. As I stated, this is a South Korean classic about a man who's been imprisoned for over 15 years and seeks answers over his imprisonment. And through that, the main character goes on a real fucked up journey that leads him to his past. And it's awesome. From the beginning, the film has such an energy that is exciting and engaging. You want to know more about this man and care for his struggles. Everything about this film is creative and interesting, as well as the action scenes. While this is a mystery drama, this is also an action movie. There's not a lot, but every action scene is raw and satisfying to watch. There's the iconic scene in the hallway that has been recreated in video games and other films. It is such an amazing scene that has so much going on visually. but what brings it all together is the story. The story and characters are very engaging to follow. The film does a great job unfolding its events and leaving more questions as well. A fantastic scene is when you first meet the main villain. It's such a satisfying reveal that leads to more questions that will get explored later in the film. The performances were stellar from everyone, especially the main character and the main villain. There is so much passion in the acting from the main characters. There's just so much emotional intensity to the performances that just leave me speechless. So much is iconic about this film, like the main character waking up in a suitcase, the hallway scene, and the ending. This is one of the most intense endings of any film. It's so fucked up and I love it. The music in this film is wonderful, as well as very memorable pieces within the score. It's a phenomenal film that I definitely will be watching again in the future. I easily give this a 10 out of 10 and a spot on the favorites list. Yippee. The next film I watched was Close, directed by Lucas Domt. This director had previous work back in 2018 called Girl, which followed a trans woman as she tried ballet. I haven't seen Girl since its release, and I remember enjoying it as it followed someone who has deep struggles. With this newest film Close, I was interested to see how he improved on his filmmaking, and while I think the way it looked was better, there was still some stuff that I didn't like from his previous work that appears in this film. Close follows two kids that are really close together as they navigate their friendship. This is a very personal and intimate film that shows how homophobia can ruin and devastate lives. Some of the stuff I liked were the performances, even from the kid actors. The child performances were exceptional and very believable. The characters are what makes the film for me personally. There is so much detail in the performances, especially in the beginning, that is very well done. However, once the actual conflict within the film starts, the film becomes repetitive with its ideas and scenes, which was another problem I had with the director's previous film. While the film does a fantastic job in the beginning, the middle does drag it down for me. It is still an emotional film that does a great job with its performances and characters. I enjoyed my time with the film and I'm giving this a light 7 out of 10, close to a 6. The next film I watched was Evil Dead Rise, the newest of the Evil Dead films. Now, I love the original films, and I love the goofy and over-the-top aspects of the films. They were made with a little budget and did so much with it. My favorite of the films being Evil Dead 2 took its ideas and made a fun and entertaining cult classic. And in seeing the trailers for this newest one, it made me interested in seeing how they took the ideas presented. And while I didn't love this new film, I do have some respect for what it was trying to do. One of the positives of this film is the way it looks. It looks really good with some interesting framing and cinematography. The scene with the turntable was really great also. The use of sound in that scene was really effective. I liked that the film was entertaining and tried to be creative, and did interesting things with the sound design, practical effects, as well as the performances. But I wish the film was more wild with its ideas. Yes, there was a lot of blood and effects, but I wanted more from it. It felt a little bare bones at times. However, there was a nice and slow pacing that works with its events. That being said, when it got to the demon part, I was thinking this is kinda not effective and a little lame at times. Maybe I just thought too much about the old films, I don't know. The film just reminded me of what I liked about the previous films, and it kinda made me want to watch them. But what I have to understand is that this is trying to go for something different in terms of tone, while trying to stay true to the originals. And I do give respect to the film for trying to achieve that. I give major respect for the film because it's fun and entertaining, but I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, and I'm giving this a strong 5 out of 10. Hello, this is me in the future. I have now seen the film twice, and I liked it more the second time. No question, this is a good film that does and says things with creativity. I think I'm going to boost this up to a 6 out of 10. I highly recommend this if you haven't seen it, especially if you're an Evil Dead fan. The next film I watched was Evil Dead 2. Now, I watched this because of Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise reminded me so much of what I enjoyed about the older films. I just needed to go back and enjoy some camp, and enjoyed myself I did with this film. Evil Dead 2 is about a man named Ash who goes into the woods and evil shit happens and he goes crazy a little bit, and it's so much fun. I love that the film mostly dedicates the whole runtime to creative ideas and interesting camera work. Bruce Campbell does a great job playing a wacky character in this. His facial expressions are pretty astounding. One thing I love about this film is its use of stop motion animation. As I said in my Mad God review, check it out, I love stop motion animation and it's used a lot in this film. I will never get tired of animation effects. The film has this energy that is so great. A scene that comes to mind is when all the objects are laughing in the middle of the film. This is, I guess, considered a horror film, but it's so goofy and brings different types of comedy to the screen. Like Bruce Campbell bringing a lot of physical comedy, with the plate smashing and flipping around. The film doesn't take itself seriously by any means, and I love when horror films do that. Anyways, I love this film and I'm giving this a strong 8 out of 10, close to a 9. And the next film I watched was Scream. the 6th one. Now, I haven't seen the 5th one, and after seeing this, I am not interested in seeing it by any means. Scream 6 is like all the other Scream films. There's a killer or multiple killers, and they're after someone. This time it's Jenna Ortega's character and her sister. I forgot their names. There is nothing different about these films, or anything that kinda differs between the other films. Nothing about this one in particular is pushing the envelope or changing what it means to be a horror film, even though that's what these films proclaim. Funny thing about this is that the film, like all of them, attempts to be subversive and tries to say something about horror as a genre, and none of them actually do it except for the first one. Except this tries to handle soft reboots and what that all means. Just because it's self-aware of what it is, doesn't make the film any better. Like there's a scene that lists off who everyone is as a horror trope. Like this is the potential villain and this person is the first victim and stuff like that. Now let's talk about the end. The only real thing I enjoyed from this film was figuring out who were the killers, and seeing who the killers actually were was a little obvious, but it was fun regardless. As I said earlier, nothing about this film pushes the envelope. All the kills are very tame and just wasn't interesting, and by the end it was just a straightforward experience that doesn't offer anything more. I probably won't be watching this again because the thing I liked is more of a one-time experience, and I'm giving this a 3 out of 10. And the last film I'm talking about today is Skinamarink. This was directed by Kyle Edward Beau and is about two kids that are essentially having to survive by themselves as a ghost haunts them. Now I'm making it sound more interesting than it actually is because that is not how the film comes off. Right off the bat, let's talk about the pacing of the film. Now before I watched this, I kinda knew that it would be a bit on the slower side, and for some, this film will be a turnoff within the 10-minute mark. Just know that if you're not really getting anything from the first 15 minutes, then just know that the rest of the film stays consistently slow. What I will say is, while it's really slow, the film knows how to fully utilize atmosphere. For me, this is a very hypnotic film. The film was nicely shot with slow moving camera work and does a lot with very little. It makes the house that the film stays in seem much bigger than it really is. It's really effective when it comes to the audio. I liked the usage of old audio to make the film more authentic, as well as heavy grain and dust on the footage. It really felt like it was an old tape set that someone found. The choice of what to frame is very interesting to me as well. The creatives always frame the shots away from people's faces or just away from people in general. It's an interesting choice that's kind of a smart idea for a low budget film. There were plenty of shots that I thought were great and very well framed. While this is a patient film, it does become a little slow and repetitive in the middle. It does very similar things in the middle that made it a little harder for me to stay invested in. Without doing too much more for the length of the runtime, my enjoyment faded after a while. The charm kinda wore off. While the style is very well done, the story just wasn't as satisfying as I wanted it to be. When it comes to the themes of the film, I think it's mostly about neglect. The kids in the house are left alone for the majority of the runtime, and I wonder where and what the parents are doing. You see them briefly and then it's back to the kids being alone. I don't know what more to say other than I kinda enjoyed it, I guess, and I'm giving this a strong 5 out of 10, close to a 6. And that's about it for this video. If you liked, then please leave a like and subscribe. I'm Thorough Churro, and I'll do something else later, I guess. I don't really know. Bye now.